Good afternoon. Fall camp, season 4. A lot of things to be excited about for this team. I spoke a lot on it on media day just this past week, but certainly thrilled to be back at work. It's fun to see the guys in the building. Excited to see about what questions we're able to answer this fall camp. I know our guys are ready to work. That being said, we can open it up for questions.
Couple days out, Dan, kind of what are some of your big picture thoughts going into this one and maybe kind of expectations for this group?
It never really changes season to season. There's an excitement just because it's a new group. You want to see what they embrace, what they want to attack. I think everyone's day one is always elite. There's always, there might be some mistakes, but they're mistakes that are made at full speed. I know that's going to happen with us. More than anything, I'm just ready to attack it and figure out what we're really great at, what we got to improve at. That's the fun part for me is what problems do we get to solve.
Dan, it looked like there's a few over the 105. Just how many DSAs were there and how you went about managing that?
Probably won't hop into that. I don't know the exact number for you.
All the way in the back right, Aaron?
With it being your second year in the Big Ten, you're still having to face a lot of new opponents that this program hasn't really seen in a long time or in the regular season. Just what do you like about the way that your staff approached the preparation for those new opponents, and what are you hoping to kind of bring into, again, this season, going to a lot of new places and hosting some new opponents?
Yeah, you talk about what to expect in year 2, and like you said, there's going to be several teams that we didn't play this past year. We got a unbelievable advanced scouting group. Tyler Dean, his staff, they do a ton for us as far as just hopping ahead to be able to evaluate what do these teams look like, who have they added, who have they lost, what coaching turnover do they have. And we do a kind of a summer scouting report on each one of those teams to give us a little bit of a feel for what are they going to look like, what do we need to be prepared for when we get to those points in the season. And kind of the way our bye weeks have fallen this next year, it's a little bit different than last year where they're so spread out. It's almost like you have individual seasons there where you can kind of prepare for what's new with each opponent. But some new venues that we're going to be traveling to, whether it's traveling to Rutgers or Iowa or Penn State, some Northwestern, those will all be new for us. So those will be new experiences that I'm excited for our guys to be able to handle and attack.
Coach, good to see the secondary is a group that a lot of fans are excited about this year. A couple of veteran guys, and Dylan and Jaden, that are coming over, but a lot of young guys are going to probably be called on to step up this year. What do you kind of need to see from some of those young guys to ultimately be confident and putting them out there?
Yeah, we feel like there's a level of play, right, that you're either above the line or really below the line. As many guys as we can find that can do that, we want to find roles for them, right? And that it's going to look different week 1 than it'll look week 6, right? There were guys that were involved for us at the end of the season. Kingston Lopez is a great example. Is a guy that learned throughout the year and then was able to have a big role for us in the Big Ten championship this past season. So it'll change over time, but ultimately, this group looks a lot like you want it to look as far as size, speed, athleticism. It's our job now to get them caught up to where they can execute at a high level.
Right here on the right, Lydia.
Lots of roster turnover this year and a lot of younger players or less experienced players stepping into larger roles. What are the advantages of having those players on the field who might not have as much on tape for other programs in the conference to see?
Yeah, and I don't know the exact numbers, but, comparative to roster turnover, like our first year, I think it was over 50 players. I think our second year is over 40. So there's turnover, but in a different way. Like we sent a lot of guys onto the NFL and a lot of opportunities. That doesn't mean the guys behind them aren't going to be those same, quality players. Every year we've had more get the opportunity to go play at the league. So I think you're going to see some faces that are certainly capable of that. But it starts at what they do at Oregon. So that's part of what we got to figure out, right? There's some turnover. There's some new learning. Maybe you peel back a little bit less on the install, but you're also afforded so much time in the summer and the spring to really get a jump on what you want to be able to accomplish and what you want to be able to learn. So our guys, we have a big volume. We have a lot of stuff on offense, a lot of stuff on defense, special teams that we're going to be able to incorporate this year, and it's about what they can handle and getting them ready for those moments.
We're going to go back for the next 3. Matt in the middle.
Kind of touching on that, you recently talked about the confidence in a lot of guys that are going to be playing for their first opportunity for the public to kind of see them. Where does that confidence come from? Where do you feel like this team's still going to be where they were last year, but with new faces?
Well, I don't know. I mean, that's what we have to figure out. But, you look at competitive sports, you look at guys that have a lot of success, and a lot of it comes on with, competition anxiety, right? And then lack of confidence. That's where people fail. So our goal within fall camp is how can we create the same anxiety you'd have on game day? How can we make practice look as much as possible like a game and how can we build confidence in what guys do well. And that's part of our job as coaches. It's about having belief in players that the next play is the most important play. And our guys, when they get their fuel from internally, intrinsically, rather than externally, I think that's when they perform their best. So that's really the goal this fall.
Go Brett here, on the left.
Coach, you talked a lot about obviously the goals. I'm just wondering, year over year, how much are the goals of this program to your leadership stay the same, and how do you maybe add new goals to kind of change with the flavor and keep things kind of progressing and moving along each year that you're a head coach here within this program?
Well, I think everything in football is about learning different ways to say the same thing over and over again, right? To make sure that it's interesting and exciting for your team. Ultimately, winning football is winning football. That's been really consistent. What's the new run scheme in the league that we haven't seen? That's what's different, right? So you have to be great at stopping the run and great at running the ball, right? We know that. So that's the goal that stays the same, right? We want to be able to be a team that can rush consistently for over 5 yards per carry. We want to be a team on defense that can hold people under 3.3 yards per rush, right? So that stays the same. What's going to change is how do you do it? So I think the goals, they're consistently the same. There's some of those goals that we've hit in the past and some that we hadn't, but that tells you quickly, okay, this is an area that we want to attack. This is something we got to do better this season. So ultimately, a lot of it's the same. The process of getting there might be a little bit different, but the process in itself is also the same.
Far left, back. Your first year out, you win the Big Ten. How do you top that, and what's a successful season in your eyes this year?
I get asked that question every year, and for me, it's always the same. What's the best version of us? If we're playing our best football, if we're being the best that we can possibly be, then that's something I'm excited about, and the results kind of take care of themselves. What's our goal? I mean, we have high standards. We came here to win championships. Obviously, we got an opportunity to taste that last year with the Big Ten championship. We want to win them all, not just some of them, right? But that's also not football. That's not very common. It's hard to do. So biggest goal is to be uncommon, right? To do things that other people can't do, and we have to figure out who we are to get there.
Right here, back row, left side.
Obviously, the first couple games last year, you guys were winning, but you may not have looked the way you wanted to, and then you were able to make those early adjustments to go on to have the perfect season. What does a turnaround like that do for you as a coach going forward as you continue to coach these teams?
Yeah, it's unique. You always want to start fast, right? I think also you look at the end of the season, you realize all of a sudden, man, Boise State was a pretty good team, right? They're a team that's playing in the college football playoff. Idaho was a good team at their level. Certainly, we want to be able to play to our standard, not base it off of somebody else. But you learn a lot of things about your team, and most seasons you are going to experience some form of adversity. It's about how your team handles that. And I thought our guys handled it really well early in the season. We're able to kind of get in sequence, in gear. That's always going to happen. We had a new quarterback last year. We're going to have that again, right? So there's going to be some growing pains as we grow as a team. The key is you hope you can grow through wins and not through losses.
Front left, Brandon.
Reflecting back on last year and just thinking of improvement of process, is there anything that really stood out to you as something that you would have loved to do better, and how are you looking to implement that this year?
Yep. There's a lot of things that we want to improve and get better at. Probably not a lot of things that I would share with y'all. But yeah, there's a lot of things we want to do better.
Dan, you mentioned last week reaching out to Dabo and interacting with him for, I think, the first time. How much of that was set up with Corey, and how much of that was kind of picking his brain regarding messaging versus practice and process?
It really wasn't set up through anybody else. Like every year, I kind of challenge myself to find some people to touch base with, and he was kind enough to touch base back. So there's a lot of people that have done the game at a really high level that I want to be able to pick their brain. We really talked about all things program, right? Not necessarily messaging, but all things organizationally. Why he thought he was able to, have some of the success that he's had over the years, and what separated some of his team. So really appreciate his insight.
Right here on the left, fourth row.
Coach, losing Evan obviously hurts because not only is he a talented player, but he's a guy with experience, starting experience in this offense. But what excites you about the opportunity that it gives to other guys in that receiver room?
Well, it never excites you to see a player get injured, right? That never excites you. But I do think we'd be lying if we said there wasn't an opportunity now for other guys to be able to step up and create a role for themselves. So I'm excited to see how that all plays out. I have a lot of confidence in that room. I have a lot of confidence in Coach Douglas, Coach Stein, and what they do with our offense. But part of that's figuring it out through fall camp.
Right here, Max, front middle.
Coach, with Jeff heading to the NFL now, it sounds like we'll probably see at least one new guy emerge as a contributor at linebacker. Whether we're talking about Jerry, Braden, Kamar, Dylan, what have you seen from those guys and their development and taking that next step?
Well, guys just work really hard this summer. I think our guys have put in a lot of work. As far as production over the summer workouts, I think we've seen as much as from a measurable standpoint as we've ever seen since we've been here. Coach Love and his staff did a great job. There's going to be some linebackers that get an opportunity to have a role. And I've been at places where you're playing 5 linebackers, right? I've been at places where you're playing 2. So a lot of that's going to be based on what they're able to do this fall, within fall camp and then throughout the season, right? You want guys that continue to grow.
Coach, the second.
Yeah, I would just say every position on our team is open, right? And what I'm looking for is who performs the best. And then if you have 4 guys that can perform at a level that's worth, performing at a winning level, that they do it a great job, the people around them play better, then that's going to create an opportunity for them.
If you could put it into words, what's the central theme going into the season?
I kind of said it the other day, but double down, right? And that can't be misconstrued with the difference of growth, because growth is really important. But you look at our team over time and you say, man, this process has worked, right? We've gotten better every single year. We've won more games. We've played competitive football at a really high level. So the process works. How can we do the process better than anybody else? The pieces that'll change within that process is, about us as coaches and us as players figuring out what we do best and what's going to be really tough on our opponents.
Back middle, Brett.
Coach, I thought it was really interesting at Media Day. You talked about the service your players have had on the community, how many hours you put in. I'm just wondering, how does, making players better people have an impact on the field, and why is that important to you? Do you feel like to have that within them?
Well, the only thing that I probably get graded on in my job here is if we win or lose, right? But personally, how do I grade myself? Are these guys walking out the door better humans, right? Are they going to be great fathers, great husbands someday, people that you want in your community, people that business owners want to hire or create their own businesses? I think service has got to be at the heart of what every one of us is about, right? And some people say it, right? Some people it's about having a camera in their face when they're doing something, but for us, it's a little bit more than that. And our guys embrace that. I challenged Usman when he first joined our program in player personnel that I want to have a group that does more community, they've ever done here at Oregon than it's done around the nation. Like, that's really important to me. And Carl, that entire staff has done a really good job of finding opportunities for our guys to be able to give back. And every one of our players realize that they're unbelievably blessed, to be a part of what we do. And part of that's also preparing them for their future and their opportunity to give back. When you have blessings, you got to bless back.
Back middle, Matt.
You mentioned it earlier that the guys that have left the program, those guys left because they went pro or they just simply ran out of eligibility. Roster retention's a big thing right now, and your program didn't see a lot of players' eligibility leave with their choosing. Why is that going to be a big factor for this team moving forward, and how critical is just roster retention for any program?
Yeah, retention's huge, and I think that's something we've done really well since I've been here. Thinking about going into year 4 now, I don't think we've lost a starter to the transfer portal. I think that speaks to a lot of things. Their players enjoy being here. They feel like they're getting developed. They feel a real connection on our team. I think that's super important because ultimately the players that are on your roster are going to make more of an impact than the players that are joining your roster. And we have some great players that have joined our roster that I think will make a big impact, but the foundation starts with the people that are here and how they grow and what they become.
Back left. You have a pretty huge game coming up at the end of September. Is that game, or is there another game you're most excited about traveling or going to?
Montana State's the one I'm most excited about. That's your coach speak for the day.
Last row here, Sam, on the right.
Talk a bit about Kenyan Sadique and what your expectations are for him going forward, as well as the impact he's had so far.
I think Kenyan's one of the most dynamic players in college football. And he's just grown and gotten better every single year that he's been here. What I love that I'm starting to see show up in Kenyan that I haven't seen as much of before is the leadership traits that are starting to develop. And I think things that I used to say about Terrence Ferguson or Pat Herbert, right? Guys that have been here before. And now I'm starting to say those same things about Kenyan, the way he takes the field, the way he works in practice drills, the effort to film, all those pieces are really adding up. But Kenyan's always been an unbelievable player. I think this will be a great season for him to have a coming out party.
Front right, James.
Dan, there seems to be a real divide in terms of perception and reality with Bear, nationally speaking, about the transfers going back to his high school era, about work ethic, Some would say he quit on SC last season. Yet all of his former SC teammates, including those in the league, rave about him, talk about how smart he is and how hard he works. Lincoln raved about him. If a guy quit on a team, that wouldn't be the case. They wouldn't former teammates, coaches wouldn't respect it. When you see it every day, when your relationship goes back with him as many years as you do, what is it that the nation isn't seeing from this young man that earns that respect, even if it hasn't worked out at a couple of spots?
Well, Bear's worked his tail off since he's been here, and I think he understands the perception that's out there. And like you said, perception isn't always reality. He puts in more time when it comes to film study, when it comes to extra work, than almost anybody in our program. And I think that speaks to his commitment. I also think he realized, hey, this is an opportunity for me to really set the stage for what am I going to be defined as moving forward. And he realizes, everybody wants individual success, but I think Bear's one of those guys that realizes that comes through team success. He's a guy that understands what standard looks like. And there was some in between there for him, but I think he felt really comfortable coming here, knowing that what it was like at Georgia and how could he recreate some of that experience coming to a place like Oregon. The relationship there certainly mattered. I'm excited to see what Bear does. He's worked his tail off since he's been here. He's been, a pleasure to coach. He's going to have some up and down moments like every player in our program will when they get here. But so far, I'm really pleased with what I've seen from Bear. I'm excited to see what he's able to do out there on the field for us this year.
Dan, we know you're a defensive guy, obviously, but as a head coach, you have to have some sort of a role with the offense as well. How do you kind of like to attack that and leave your mark on the offensive side of the ball?
Well, I think there's certain standards you talk about, like the identity of a program. And what's important to me is we have an identity, right? And regardless of who our offensive coordinator has been, Will's done an unbelievable job now going into year 3. The offensive staff, like you talk about continuity, we have a lot of that right now across the board with our staff. What I learned from Coach Saban was just the attention to detail of where's your time spent and how do you use it, and whether it's a meeting with offensive staff on a Monday night or a Tuesday night for a third down red area or a Wednesday night to go over game, like we have that kind of laid out to where I know I can be a part of it. And I want to see their creativity. I want to see an offensive staff and our offensive game plan be something that changes over time that's difficult to defend, but they know what I feel really strong about, and they know where I'm like, hey, go be creative. Let's see what we can come up with. And some of the best offensive coaches I've ever been around, whether it's visiting with Andy Reid or seeing some of the things that we've done at places I've been in the past, I think you have to look for ways to step outside the box, but don't lose the central framework of it's about players, it's about matchups, it's about executing at a really high level, and those are the things that we've been able to do here the last few years.
We got time for 2 more right here, front, middle with the tie.
Coach, with some new faces at key positions, especially coming in at quarterback, we talked a little bit about Kenyan Sadique being a key target. Talk to me about the chemistry that your skilled players are building with their new quarterbacks and what you hope to see, how you hope to see that grow throughout fall camp.
Yeah, it happens through fall camp, right? So there's been some of that this summer. These guys have had some throwing sessions this summer. They've had some stuff this spring, but this is where you really have to get into a rhythm. And early on, we've always done it. I love seeing different people out there with different groups so we can mix the groups up and figure out who's going to excel, who's a difference maker in that 11 guys that are on the field, who's a guy that makes the people around him better. And then there's that piece of finding rhythm once you start to identify those people. So we'll work with several guys out there on the field, several guys throwing to different people throughout fall camp, and then we'll settle into a group that we feel like gives us the best chance.
Last question, James, here on the right.
Dan, if you could reflect back to your first season compared to this one, specifically at the receiver position, you've overhauled a lot of position groups, and this roster is now 100% guys that either you signed or brought in via the portal. But in that year, there were experienced guys, maybe didn't have a ton of production, and a lot of young guys, to now kind of a similar situation. Can you speak to the similarities that there may or may not be, and how much Junior did to help morph that room and bring it to where it is, and what Ross can do to put his stamp on it now, and what he's already doing on the recruiting show going forward?
Yeah, it's interesting. There's been some great wideouts to play at Oregon, but I don't think that's something that Oregon's ever necessarily been known for. And you look over the last few years at some of the guys that have been performing for us, whether it's going back to like Troy, right, or what Tez has done more recently. Like we've been able to have some real success with our wideouts. And I even think back to that, the beginning years of early guys like Chase Cota that made such an impact just because of the way he carried himself, what kind of leader he was. And then obviously Junior did a great job with talent acquisition and developing relationships in that room. I'm a big fan of June. Excited to see what he does with the Cowboys. But Ross has a new challenge, and he's certainly up to that challenge. You look at how he coaches, the details that he puts in it, the experience he's had, whether it's with the Patriots or Syracuse, or even his experience of being on the defensive side of the ball, or earlier in his career. I think all those things are going to really pay dividends for our guys this season. And we have some of that same thing again. We have some young guys, and then we have some guys that have a lot of experience or at least a lot of time in that room, whether it's Gary Bryant or Justice Lowe, guys that have been in there for a long time, know what it looks like, and then some young guys that are going to be coming up and have an opportunity to make an impact.